Hello everyone, it is with great pleasure that we welcome you to today's Warm Homes Local Grant webinar. My name is Yasmin Nunes and I'm a Senior Consultant at Turner & Townsend. We are joined today by Nick Graham, James Gigg and Alexei Rodin from the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, also known as DESNZ, and Dan Leeming, Strategic Support Manager for Retrofit Information, Support and Expertise, also known as RISE. This is a RISE webinar. RISE is a completely free service fully funded by the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero to support housing providers and local authorities with their retrofit programs. The purpose of today's event is to provide you with an overview of the expression of interest, also known as EOI, for the Warm Homes Local Grant and the support that will be available to you through RISE. Today's webinar will be grounded in the EOI model of Warm Homes Local Grant. Following this, the DESNZ team will address the different steps of the EOI model, including completing the expression of interest form, mobilisation period, and delivery assurance check, also known as DAC. Then we will hand over to Dan Leeming to cover the support available through RISE.
Great. So in terms of the Warm Homes Local Grant, this is just a brief overview for anyone who wasn't able to make the previous webinar or to act as a refresher. But essentially, the Warm Homes Local Grant is a fuel poverty scheme that's government funded. It has two key objectives. The primary objective is to tackle fuel poverty through achieving bill savings for households. And the secondary objective is to progress net zero 2050 by bringing carbon savings through households and installing low carbon heat. And we do this through providing grants through the local authorities, for energy performance measures and low carbon heating to low income households who are living in England in the worst performing homes. So I'll just take you through a little bit of the scope. So how do we define low income households? There are essentially three eligibility pathways for households for this scheme. The first is through your postcode. So if you live in an income deprived postcode in income deciles 1 to 2 of the indices of multiple deprivation, you will automatically qualify for funding. So you'll be eligible if your property is also eligible. And there are around 1.5 million households in England who would be able to get their household eligibility through this route. So that's a really exciting, easy way for local authorities to find people to sign up. The second one is if they're in receipt of a means tested benefit as a proxy for low income. And then the third pathway is to have a income of under £36,000, and that's gross annual household income. Altogether, there's around 5 to 6 million households that are eligible for this scheme in England. So it's probably our biggest low income scheme of the sort of lads and hugs that we've been delivering since 2020. So that's really exciting, and hopefully means that it will be easier than ever for local authorities to find people in need. In terms of tenures, it's both owner-occupier and private rented sector households that are eligible, so this should be pretty familiar. And similarly, it's a rollover of the social housing rule where they're not eligible because we have the social housing fund, but they can receive funding if it's for infill, i.e. if they're sandwiched in between two other homes that are eligible and they're kind of jointly receiving a measure such as external wall insulation. In terms of property eligibility, homes need to be an EPC of D to G, and this is because fuel poverty is essentially defined as a low-income household living in a D to G home, and this funding is for fuel poverty. All fuel types are eligible, so gas, electric, oil, coal, LPG, solid fuels, any fuel type can enter the scheme. And then finally, in terms of grants, it's any eligible measure that can be modelled by RDSAP and covered under the required quality standards. So that's the PAS standards and MCS that you'll be familiar with. And there's more on that in the published guidance. In terms of some key timelines, the expression of interest window is open. So this is really exciting. It opened on Wednesday, the 16th. So last Wednesday, and I hope you would have got some of those communications coming through from RISE and from ourselves. And it will be open until the 1st of December. So pleased to say it doesn't close on the same day as the Social Housing Fund, there'll be an extra few days for you to fill out our forms on that. And then we will do the standard kind of assessments and clearing of that internally before we're able to then send out offers and MOUs, which will happen in the new year. So stay tuned for that. I'm also pleased to say that we have published an allocation guidance along with opening the window, so you can look at that online. I'll share it once I've stopped presenting into the chat so you can see that, but it's essentially a sort of 20-page document that goes through what the expression of interest stage is, so detailed guidance on who can apply in terms of eligibility of applicants, how and when to complete an expression of interest form, and then details on how funding will be allocated to local authorities across England. The allocation guidance then goes into the mobilisation stage, so it covers at a high level what is required for the mid-mobilisation review and the delivery assurance check. And this is before we would publish a sort of more full version that really gets into all the little details of who you should email and when, all the processes, etc. And then it goes through some of the RISE support that's available to help you apply for funding as part of the expression of interest, and then how to mobilise your project, both for our requirements and then on a wider level to make sure that you are kind of upskilled across all elements of retrofit. So I'm going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to pass now to Alexi to take you through this section.
Perfect, thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. So we'll talk a little bit more about the overview of the expression of interest model. So we did that, I believe, to touch base in our previous webinar on the policy guidance. The Warm Homes Local Grant will use an expression of interest allocation model where all eligible local authorities in England who submit an expression of interest form by the deadline will be allocated as some sort of a funding. As we mentioned previously, there will be no pass or fail assessment at the expression of interest stage, but we will still assure that all projects meet minimum criteria for successful delivery through the delivery assurance check before the funding can be drawn down to upgrade the homes. So I think on the previous webinar we also showed the diagram below, and so today we'll be talking about the expression of interest form. We'll cover the mobilization period as well as the mid-mobilization review and delivery assurance checks. So the expression of interest model is intended to ensure as many households as possible can access funding via the local authorities by ensuring that all local authorities that require funding received it. It's also improved the journey for local authorities by making it easier to express an interest and mobilize, and ensure that bulk of funding is drawn down at the point of need by local authorities and batches over the delivery windows once homes are ready for the installation. So in terms of the eligible participants, as Nick mentioned previously, the scheme is available only in England. So because the fuel poverty is a devolved issue, so local authorities can apply as an individual project or a consortium of local authorities working together. Only local authorities, as defined in Section 33 of the Local Government Act, functional bodies such as the mayoral authorities in England will be allocated funding. No other body can receive funding as a grant for funding as awarded under Section 31 of the Local Government Act. So, for example, eligible bodies could be local authorities, combined authorities, and net zero hubs. For the consortium, it must be submitted on by one local authority who is acting as a lead local authority and as a primary contact. Local authorities cannot participate in multiple projects, as exception only in net zero hubs, who may choose to lead two plus smaller consortia for their regions. And previously, we also mentioned the Devolution Trailblazer pilots. So local authorities with the West Midlands Combined Authority, as well as the Great Manchester Combined Authority, will be receiving an allocation of funding as a part of our commitment to the pilots announced in the Trailblazer devolution deals. So the Greater Manchester and West Midlands and their constituent local authorities will therefore not permitted to submit an expression of interest for this national scheme. So as a department is committed for the funding simplification beyond these areas where it makes most sense for the net zero outcomes. So, and I will pass over to James to talk you through the expression of interest form.
Great. Okay. So hi everyone. I know I wasn't on the webinar we did a few weeks ago, so I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm James Gigg, and I work on the policy of the scheme, like Alexi and Nick. Prior to this, I worked on the delivery of sustainable warmth, which some of you may also have worked on. So I'm going to go through the expression of interest form now. And as Alexi has talked through, this is the first stage of the Warm Homes Local Grant. So I'll move into what you need to do. So the EOI form needs to be submitted via email to the email address you can see on the screen by the 1st of December. And it consists of 8 different sections. There's a guidance and checklist section. Then there's 5 different sort of data entry tabs that all EOIs will need to enter data into. There's an annex, which only some EOIs will need to complete, and I'll sort of go into more detail on that in the subsequent slides. And then there's the privacy notice, which doesn't need to have anything entered by you, but which is just covers the personal information that we gather through the form. So to just talk through the sections in a bit more detail, section 1, which is the bottom left, is the details of the EOI. So it's primarily the information on the lead LA and the contact details of the person submitting the form. And we'll use this information to communicate updates to you, information on training, and so on. Section 2 is then some declarations, which we ask that you affirm your compliance with the requirements of the grant scheme. And there's then a question at the bottom which asks if you haven't been able to affirm any of those declarations, you should give an explanation there. Oh, and just to say, I'm going to share my screen and talk through the form itself, so I'll go into a bit more detail. Section 3 is on the delivery assurance check, or DAC, and procurement for the grant. And this is to enable us to assess whether your procurement will be completed in time to allow you to meet the proposed DAC month, which is essentially when you think you'll be ready to start delivering upgrades for the scheme. Section 4 is on resourcing and checking that you have enough resource in place to, or will have enough resource in place to mobilise and deliver the scheme. Section 5 is for funding, and it first asks about your past performance to enable us to anchor the amount of funding that we allocate you to the capacity that you have to deliver. And then you make a funding request. Bottom right then is Annex A, and that is only for consortium projects, and only for consortium projects that have LAs that need to undertake the delivery assurance check at different times. So we expect that most consortia will come to the delivery assurance check at one time. They'll have procured perhaps together just through the lead LA, and therefore they'll be ready to start delivery at the same time. For other consortia, particularly larger ones, it might be that different procurement is happening in different parts of the consortium at different timelines, and therefore we don't want to hold you back from starting delivery when you're ready to. So if that applies, then you'll complete Annex A. Nobody else needs to. Okay, so this is now about allocations for the project. So based on the lessons learned that we've kind of gathered from previous schemes like LAD and HUG, that's the local authority delivery scheme and the home upgrade grant. So the previous local authority retrofit schemes that we've collectively delivered. We now want to anchor allocations to your previous delivered capacity to reduce the risk of underspend on the Warm Homes Local Grant. So we'll base our allocations on an LA or a consortium of LAs best 6 months of previous delivery in a LAD, HUG, or the combined sustainable warmth scheme. There will also be an overall limit to the funding allocated to the scheme based on the amount of funding that we have overall for the Warm Homes Local Grant. As we've said in the guidance, we don't currently know that number, or of course we would tell you, but currently we're waiting on the spending review to find that out. But once we do have that figure, we'll then have to set the allocations to that number as well. So when we're calculating your funding request, we'll assume an average cost per home of £12,400. That's capital cost. And this is based on our modelling of the likely average delivery. It might be that you expect to deliver more or less than that, but that's the figure that we're going to be using and that you should use to base your request on. And as I said, if the grant is oversubscribed after we've gone through this process of accounting for past delivery, all the allocations will then be scaled down proportionately. So in terms of the sort of process, the local authority, the lead local authority would request a capital funding allocation alongside data on their past performance. We then scale each financial year allocation based on that past performance data, and or if we feel that the delivery assurance check month needs to be moved backwards. And after that, we then ask, is the grant overall within the total allocation that we receive? If it is, then we would issue those final allocations to local authorities. If it isn't, then we would scale all LA allocations down proportionately until we reach the total allocation. I saw a question pop up saying, how do you judge the best 6 months of delivery? It's the maximum homes upgraded in a 6 month period. Okay, so this is just a bit more on how you would enter the data. So yeah, you'd be required to select the peak delivery capacity, so the peak homes upgraded over a 6 month period from a previous LAD, HUG, or sustainable warmth project. We will then verify those figures against the data that we hold to make sure that everything is accurate, and then we'd use those figures to establish your capacity for each financial year. This might seem difficult for you to provide. If it is, then please do reach out to rise@turntown.co.uk, who will be able to help you out with completing this request. For consortia projects, only the previous performance data for those LAs that are included in this consortium for the Warm Homes Local Grant should be included. So if an LA has left a consortium, you shouldn't include the homes upgraded in that area. If an LA has joined your consortium for the Warm Homes Local Grant, then you can include their capacity. And also for consortia, you can use the sum of the best 6 month period of delivery of each of your consortium members. So if some consortium members perform better in, say, June to oh gosh, I'm now having to do maths, June to November, and others perform better in August to January, I think, then you can combine those two individual periods, so you can sum the capacity for your consortia. Hopefully I haven't mangled that explanation too much, but if I have, then please ask a question, we'll get to it. If you are doing that, then please write mixed in the first month of 6 month window cell. So speaking of which, this is a screenshot of the EOI form, showing where you would enter this data. So the two pieces of information is the first month of the 6-month window of your best 6-month window, and the number of homes that you completed in that 6-month window. As I say, I'll walk through the form in a sec, so that might help as well. For any projects that haven't delivered any previous projects under LAD or HUG, we'll use an average of similar projects capacity. So if you apply as a single LA, then we would apply the average for single LA projects. If it's a small consortia and none of those LAs have delivered previously, then we'd set an average for small consortia, and similar for large ones. Okay, part of the form in section 3, you'll need to choose your delivery assurance check month. So what we mean by that is when you will have mobilised and procured, ready to start delivery of the grant, and therefore to come to the delivery assurance check to have those things ticked off and checked by our team. So in the EOI form, you'll select when that will be, and that will be used to check that you can deliver. To set the amount of funding in the first financial year. If, for example, you will be able to come to the DAC in April, then you'd have the full financial year, and therefore, obviously, we'd expect you'd be able to deliver more than if you come to the delivery assurance check in, say, September. That we'll go into the delivery assurance check itself in a bit more detail later on. But where we have insufficient assurance that the proposed DAC month can be met, we would delay that DAC month and reduce the funding accordingly. So you'll therefore, in the form, need to set out your procurement approach and the timelines for that procurement, so that we can assure ourselves that those contracts will be procured in time for the anticipated DAC month. Secondly, we'll also need to know that there's enough resource in place to mobilise the project and to therefore to meet the DAC month that you set. For consortia projects that require multiple delivery assurance checks, we require that the project lead, so the lead local authority of that consortium, participates in the first delivery assurance check, because the lead needs to be able to project manage the project, and of course to submit the 5 required documents in the delivery assurance check. As a sort of summary, the funding that you request in the form could be adjusted by us based on 3 things. 1, your past performance. 2, how achievable the selected DAC month is, based on your procurement timelines and your mobilisation. And 3, if after those 2 things, we need to scale down all projects proportionately to meet the total pot of funding that we have. This is the expression of interest form. It's live, as Nick said, as of last Wednesday, and it's available on the gov.uk webpage, which I'm sure will be being posted in the chat. So this is the guidance and checklist tab. It starts off with an introduction. I'm going to keep this relatively brief, so I won't talk through every single cell. But then it goes into a checklist for completion. This is optional, and you don't need to complete it if it's not useful for you, but it's just a sort of ready reckoner to say we've completed this section, we don't need to look at this anymore, for example. Then there's some guidance. It talks about the mandatory and optional questions in the form, the different formats, and what the different colours mean. So I'll just quickly say that most questions are in the same blue as is here on this guidance tab. There are other ones that are purple like this, and those are for consortium expressions of interest only. You're normally expected to answer the questions in white cells like this one, and green cells will be automatic calculations. They're not questions, they're automatically calculating something based on what you put in. Okay, the only other thing to say is if you do need anything in a more accessible format, then please let us know if these colors don't work or anything like that. For any questions, as we said, please go to rise@turntown.co.uk, and to submit the completed form, it's whlg@energysecurity.gov.uk. Then the first tab of the form where you actually need to put some information in is this section 1 on details of the local authority, and it's does what it says on the tin really, but I'll first just say that there's this guidance cell at the top of each of the data entry tabs, which should help you to complete the form, and it says in here which questions are mandatory and which are optional. So we ask for the name of the lead local authority, and whether this is consortium, EOI, and so on. If it is a consortium, this is the first consortium only question. It's in purple, and this one is asking you to set out which LAs are in your consortium. There's then some contact details, and finally another consortium question where we ask you to affirm that only LAs that have consented to participate are in this EOI. It says in the allocation guidance, but we mandate that only LAs can only participate in one project for the Warm Homes Local Grant, with the exception of net zero hubs. So moving on to the second section, this is some declarations, as I said. So for example, that the person completing this has the authority to complete the EOI on behalf of the LA or LAs named. And you can select affirm or do not affirm. I won't go through them all, but there's 6 statements here, which we expect you to be able to affirm all of them. If for any reason you can't do that, or you think you can't do that, then 2G gives you the opportunity to explain why, and we'd likely get in touch with you to talk about that if that was the case. Section 3 is then on the delivery assurance check and procurement. And as I said, there's a sort of caveat that any EOI that is submitted by a consortium that needs to undertake the delivery assurance check in multiple waves over time through the project needs to just select yes in this first question, and then they wouldn't need to answer any of the rest of the questions in this section. They'd instead go to Annex A down at the bottom and complete similar information, but specialized to that situation. I'll go through that in a second, but for now, we'll assume that the answer to this has been no, and therefore you would complete the rest of this section. So as I've gone through, we ask you to tell us when you can, when you intend to undertake your delivery assurance check, so what month in the first financial year of the scheme. And then we also allow you to use any contracts or delivery assurance check documents from HUG2 to transfer them into the Warm Homes Local Grant to sort of start delivery as quickly as possible. This might not be right for you, either because you didn't deliver HUG2 or because you don't think it's appropriate to your sort of contractual situation. It's purely optional. And there's more details, of course, in the allocation guidance online. But you would select here whether you intend to do that, either for documents or for contracts or for both. Then we'll talk later on about the mid-mobilisation review. This green cell just tells you, based on what month you put in here, when that mid-mobilisation review would be. So it's halfway between when you sign the memorandum of understanding and when you expect to undertake the delivery assurance check. We then ask for information about procurement, so a sort of single summary of the route, and then some more detail in free text on the timelines for your procurement and how you will ensure that you're able to meet that selected DAC month, as I spoke about. There's then some more affirmations based on the procurement regulations, the Model and Slavery Act, and mitigating any conflicts of interest in the procurement. Section 4 is a shorter one and focuses on ensuring that there's enough resource to deliver the project and specifically to mobilise the project. So we expect there to have a minimum of 2 full-time equivalent staff. And we also ask in 4B whether this will be in place for mobilisation to allow you to use that FTE to mobilise the project. And if you either won't have 2 FTE or it won't be in place in time for the start of mobilisation, we then ask you to explain how you'll ensure that you meet that DAC month, as I set out before. Section 5 is then on the request for funding and past performance. So this is the table that you saw a screenshot of in the slides. So you'll enter here the first month of your best 6-month window of delivery, which is, as I said, based on the number of homes you upgraded. And you'd then enter the number of homes in that 6-month window. We then ask you to enter a capital funding request. So we split this because, as I said, we are waiting for the outcome of the spending review to know the total amount of funding for the project and also the full final delivery window. We ask for the capital funding request for the first financial year of the scheme and then for each subsequent financial year. So obviously, if we had full information on how long the scheme would run, then we would have split it out by year, but this is sort of our best means of gathering this information with the information that we have. So you'd enter, I'll just give an example of £1 million. I think that's enough zeros. And the table then automatically calculates the amount of associated admin and ancillary funding, and therefore the total grant funding. It then gives an estimate of the homes to be delivered based on that capital funding amount, which is based on, as I said, a figure of £12,400 for capital funding. And as I said, that is indicative. You can spend more per home and therefore deliver fewer homes than this, or spend less per home and upgrade more homes. But this is just to give a sort of estimate of what that amount of funding would mean. We then also give a range around that central estimate, and then in the final column, the maximum upfront payment that you would receive in this financial year. So the upfront payment is a maximum of 20% of the funding allocation for that financial year, and it's the A&A portion, and then 5% for capital funding. The second line does the exact same thing, but it might be that because you'll have mobilised and kind of got your project going, that the second and any subsequent financial years you could deliver more funding, therefore you might put a higher number in. That's up to you, of course. In our calculation of your capacity to deliver, we base that capacity on the 6 months of your best performance previously, and then we add a 10% sort of buffer for growths in capacity. So we take your best previous performance, we uplift it by 10% and set that as the maximum that we would allow. per year. But where there's strong justifications, we may allow up to 20% above the capacity you've previously delivered. So if you think that should apply to you, and you do have strong justification, then we would invite you to give examples of that here. We have given things that we consider to be sort of strong justification in this guidance cell. So, for example, that the local authority has only ever delivered HUG previously, and can provide evidence that including on-gas homes will increase the delivery rate of the project. Finally, in this section, there's a question on the percentage of the homes treated that you expect to be off the gas grid. This is purely indicative, and it's not a binding target. We're not going to sort of come after you if you don't happen to hit the 20% of homes you thought would be off gas grid, but it's just so that we can understand the likely impacts, and to give you also a target to sort of aim towards, and to set for your contractors perhaps, so that you can sort of make sure that you're spreading the benefit of the project to off gas grid homes as well as on. But like I say, this is non-binding and it is aspirational. This is the final section that all LAs would complete, and the Annex A is only for, as I said, consortia that are coming to the delivery assurance check in multiple different waves over time. So you submit here information very similar to what the other EOIs would submit in section 3, so I won't go into it in too much detail. The main difference is that you would enter information for each of your local authorities, which would automatically populate in this column for when they would come to the delivery assurance check. This is all explained in much more detail in the form itself. Then the final section is the privacy notice. There's nothing to enter here, but it just goes through, as I'm sure you'll all be aware of, the legal basis for us gathering this information from you, and how we will look after your personal data. So that is a walkthrough of the form. Just to say, I have recorded a longer version walking through this form. If this wasn't quite enough for you, it might be, or it might not, but it goes into a bit more detail and walks through each question in slightly slower time. So if that would be useful to you, then it will be put onto the RISE website in due course. I don't think it's quite there yet. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm hoping that somebody will put the slides back up so that I can talk through my last slide. Brilliant. Okay, I'll take that control. Wow, seamless. Okay, so submitting the EOI form, the window is running from the 16th of October to the 1st of December. And you should submit to WHLG@Energy Security. And we won't be able to consider EOIs that are received after that closing date. To emphasize, EOIs won't be formally scored. If you've delivered previous, especially LAD schemes, you'll know that we used to gather a lot more information at this initial stage, and then we would score each of those applications as they were, and only the top group of LAs would receive funding. We're using a different approach here, where if you submit a valid EOI, you will receive funding, provided you've submitted all sections of the EOI form are completed and you have agreed to follow the rules of the scheme. We will allocate you grant funding. There's no risk of not receiving that funding because you didn't score as highly on a certain question as might have been the case on previous grants. If we do receive additional funding after the initial allocations have been made, the department may offer grant recipients additional allocations on the basis of this EOI form. We also may hold an additional window So we reserve the right to do either. And if during delivery we see that your performance is good, it's hitting what you've said that you would be able to do or exceeding those forecasts, we may agree additional funding for a project if we have funding available, and obviously at our discretion. That's it from me. I think I'm passing back to Alexi now to take control.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, James. So I'm just going to talk a little bit on the mobilization period. As James already touched a little bit on the EOI form. So the eligible local authorities that have completed the EOI form by the deadline will be sent a memorandum of understanding alongside with other documentation will set up for the funding allocation offer. So the mobilization period will begin once the memorandum of understanding will be signed and returned. So during the mobilization period, the grant recipients should set up their projects for delivery, including following. So these are the procuring delivery partners and installers, preparing the required documentation for the delivery assurance checks, resourcing the internal teams, as well as the retrofit teams, commencing a search for eligible households and launching communications and marketing, as well as assessing the household ready to begin the retrofits. So further details on the mobilization stage will be provided within the mobilization delivery guidance that we are planning to publish during the winter. And as we mentioned as well, we'll have a mid-mobilization review. So the mid-mobilization review will be held in between the return of the signed memorandum of understanding and your delivery assurance months selected in your EOI form. To review, this review will check your procurement progress and provide the feedback on your 5 required documents needed for the delivery assurance checks. So the list of the documents is on the right. Is the fraud risk assessment, fraud management plan, escalation contacts, as well as the eligibility verification approach. And the delivery forecast table, such as homes contacted, assessed, completed houses, the capital spent or spent. So where a document is considered to be a high standard, these may be approved earlier to give you more confidence going through the into the delivery assurance checks. So where the mid-mobilization review highlights major issues that mean reaching delivery assurance checks on time is unlikely, additional support will be recommended and available, and the delivery assurance checks months may be delayed with knock-on impact on the funding allocation on the financial year 25 to 26. Please note that while the mid-mobilization review will be conducted by RISE, the department will be a decision maker, such as whether the delivery assurance months need to be delayed or required documents approved as ready. And I will pass it over to Nick to talk through the delivery assurance checks.
Thank you, Alexi. I'm just going to take control. Great. So I'm just going to cover a high-level overview of the delivery assurance check, and to stress this webinar is mainly focused on the expression of interest form, and there will be future webinars to take you through what happens during the mobilization period, along with a mobilization and delivery guidance that will be published. So there'll be lots more coming to hopefully assist you in this. In terms of the delivery assurance check, most of you who did Hug 2 will be aware it's the gateway to entering delivery. So it's our assurance that your project is set up for delivery and can start to submit batches and draw down funding for upgrading homes. So all grant recipients will need to pass this check before they kind of start their actual delivery journey. We encourage grant recipients to take their check as soon as they are ready. So if you have a DAC month of, say, June, but you're ready in April or May, just let us know and we will do everything on our side to get you in as early as possible, because we really want you to be able to start delivery as soon as possible. And I would stress, as James did during his show and tell, that if you are in a consortium and your members maybe have their own procurements for contracts for their areas that are going to be done at varying speeds, that is completely fine. You can use Annex A to give us the various DAC months where you expect different local authorities to be coming through. What we do ask is where different local authorities are coming in the same DAC month, you pull them together to do one check with us covering those, even if it's for different contracts. In terms of the details preparing for the delivery assurance check, rest assured that you don't need to come up with templates and forms and tables yourself. We will be publishing a delivery assurance check form that will, for example, contain a table to fill out your delivery forecast, to fill out your eligibility verification approaches, and we'll also be sharing templates for other documents on fraud. So the only thing you'll need to actually produce yourself is your escalation contacts, and that's because it will really shift and change according to your project. So we'll leave that one to you, but all the rest we will provide really clear templates for. So in terms of what will be assessed at DAC, it's very similar to the mid-mobilization review, which is essentially setting you up for success for your check to come. So the DAC has 3 elements. The first is your project resourcing. So just checking whether you've got resource in place to project manage the scheme and to do your reporting requirements. We'll also be asking questions on your retrofit team, which is obviously essential for these kinds of schemes to have assessors and retrofit coordinators and designers either as part of this or that you can be in contact with to be doing your homes on a monthly basis. We'll also be looking at your contracts themselves. So to make sure you've procured your delivery partners or contractors or turnkey providers, whatever your model is, and that those have been completed so that you're ready to go into delivery. And then we'll be checking your 5 required documents. Something that we mentioned in previous webinars is we've been working hard to reduce the burden for you and not make you repeat things that you might have done previously. So some of these documents can be rolled over from HUG2 with minor updates where required. So of the 5, 3 can be rolled over, and that's the fraud risk assessment, the fraud management plan, and your escalation contacts. Where there are minor updates, for example, if a member has dropped out or been added to consortium, or potentially you've changed a way of doing things, we'd expect you to update it so that it is essentially a live document, because these should be kept live throughout the scheme. We'll also ask you your eligibility verification approach, and this will link directly to the 3 pathways that I mentioned at the start. So your postcodes, your means tested benefits, and your low income threshold. So that's why we asked for that again, just to check kind of each way of verifying for each pathway fits with our criteria as a department. And then finally, your delivery forecast table, which again needs to be fresh because it's a completely different scheme. It's not off-gas grid, it's over different years, different amounts of money. So again, it doesn't really make sense that that would be rolled over from previous scheme. I would also add that once you've passed the check, if you've rolled over your HUG2 contracts for a certain amount of time, for example, maybe they can be extended for 6 months or to a year, when they end and your kind of new procurement for the remainder of the scheme comes online, you would need to come back to us to just check that those are all kind of right and in place. So there's something that you'd have to do on the back end. Great, and I think that's it. So I think I'll be passing to Rise, but just to say the Warm Homes Local Grant Allocation Guidance link is there. I've also posted it in the chat, and as James said, there will be a longer show and tell on how to complete the EOI form, and I think we will hopefully be doing some Q&A drop-in sessions as well, so that you can come during the 6 weeks and ask any kind of burning questions you have on how to complete the form. But Rise are going to be absolutely brilliant at helping you out with that, so I'd encourage you to go to them. I can also see a lot of questions about the past performance and how that's going to work. What I would stress is that Rise is going to essentially have all the data on different local authorities given to them by the department. So one really easy way is to not necessarily worry about the detail and simply contact Rise and say, these are my 7 consortium members, what is our number to put in the form, and they can literally just tell you. So it's going to be hopefully quite simple for you to do rather than having to go through all the data yourself. So really encourage you to reach out to Rise on that. But yeah, I'll pass over now to Rise.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you for the high praise as well. Rise, what can we do for you? So just a quick overview here, really, of the process to engage with us and to access that support. So if you're not aware already, there's just a quick little sort of self-assessment form to fill in on our website. Once we've received that from you, we're then able to have a proper sit-down chat with you over Teams. So we call it the diagnostic call. And that's really just to kind of understand where you are and then, where we can come in and help you. The outcome of that call is the production of a support plan. So that really defines, we think we can help you with, this section here, or procurement, or some technical retrofit knowledge, whatever it might be in relation to your project. And then once you've agreed that with us, we would then move into one-to-one support to provide, that in-depth advice or, cater to whatever particular need it is that, you require. We can also, as well, for consortium projects as well, we can sort of do, tailored support as well. So if you have, groups of local authorities, and you'd want sort of us to facilitate particular drop-in or roundtable type sessions, just for for your specific local context, we can do that as well. So there's a few different ways we can kind of adapt ourselves to work with you. The other sort of key feature, I guess, to highlight at this stage for the expression of interest that a lot of people, I'm sure, will be quite interested in. So this time around, again, like we have done previously on things like the SHDF and HUG projects, we will be offering a critical friend review. Again, much like we'll also be offering on the Warm Homes Social Housing Fund, if you're looking at that as well. But this is really just an independent review of your funding request before submissions that hopefully give you, the best chance really of, securing the funding. And that'll include, looking at, in this case, your expression of interest, any annex documentation, and also we'll be doing as well later on when we get to it, things like the mock DACs as well, which I think somebody very helpfully pointed out in the chat as well. So none of that information that's shared between us in that goes back to DESNZ. Department don't see any of that. So it's a safe environment. We're not going to tattle on you or anything and say, oh, this authority is not up to scratch here. It's really just about making sure that you're as prepared as possible to give you that best shot of putting your best foot forward, I guess. So I think somebody might have asked about this in the chat, but the self-assessment link, it's on the screen now. Very easy to find if you just head to our website, www.riseretrofit.org.uk. It's there on that front page. There's a little link to the Rise self-assessment, and it takes about 10 minutes or something to fill it in. You don't need to be super detailed or have all the answers. It's really just so that we can get idea of who you are, what your contact details are, and kind of the basic facts, I guess, about your organization, so that then when we come to the diagnostic call, we can talk through your particular projects in proper detail and get the context for that. But it's just so that we're not going in blind, basically. But that's the first step to engaging with us and accessing that one-to-one support, and the things like the critical friend review and the mock DACs. The other thing that we do, again, I'm sure if you're already engaged with us, or maybe if you're not, maybe you've seen some of our ads posted out and about, but we've got lots of events that we put on as well. So at the minute, I think if you've never engaged with us before, I think probably the best place to start, in my opinion, would be something like our Introduction to Retrofit collection. So this is a collection on our website of some of our most popular masterclasses. So these are sort of hour-long sessions that we do. Typically, we run them live on a sort of a lunchtime slot, but it can vary a little bit. And really just sort of 20 to 30 minute-ish presentation, followed by sort of the rest of the hour with Q&A on a particular topic. So those introduction topics Might be something like, Complete Beginner's Guide to Housing Retrofit, Introduction to Data, things like that. There's also some very much more sort of narrow niche specialist masterclasses on there as well. So definitely recommend just really having a little explore on the website, and also as well a look on our events page to see what's upcoming. Some of the more particular ones for the Warm Homes Local Grant that you might be interested in. We've got some of those coming up as well. So I think the Understanding Warm Homes EOI requirements session, there's one as well, I think, writing a successful EOI form. So we've also got some quite particular stuff for this particular funding stream as well for you to check out. The other sort of big sessions that we've got on coming up at the minute are the funding request boot camps. So these are in-person one-day events, and it's sort of just really a guided tour, I guess, through everything you might need to know to submit a successful Warm Homes social housing fund or local grant outline application or expression of interest. So you can see the topics that we'll cover there at these particular sessions, bullet pointed, but it's a lot about data, procurement planning, PAS, the nuts and bolts really of getting these programs up and running and ready for delivery. The first one of those is in Leeds tomorrow. So anybody that's in sort of the West Yorkshire area, really encourage you to sign up for them. If nothing else, there's a great sandwich shop around the corner, I think, from where that Leeds venue is. So you can guarantee yourself a nice lunch, if nothing else. But we also do have sessions on in Manchester as well, and one in Newcastle too. So if you're if you're around those neck of the woods, definitely get yourself signed up to them. It's a great way to sort of meet and talk to other people as well who will be looking at similar funding streams and might have some really interesting sort of lessons to share as well. So as well as those particular funding request boot camps, there's a couple of other things as well. So as the Warm Homes Countdown Drop-in Clinic. So I think that's next Monday. We've got that at 11 till 12. It's just a drop-in clinic, really, very casual for any questions relating to Warm Homes. And there's also a masterclass as well at midday on the next Monday, which is the Warm Homes Local Grant EOI masterclass as well. So again, if you're feeling inspired by today's webinar, maybe come along to that as well. And just before I pass back to Abby, I think, to start facilitating Q&A, just wanted to flag as well, we will be at the LGA annual conference in Harrogate as well. I think a few of my colleagues, Owen, Sarah McClelland, maybe Jess Chai as well, I think, will be all running a stand there, I believe, for the full 3 days. So yeah, if you are heading along to that, do come along and say hello. Maybe book in a call with us. I think we've got a QR code there on the screen as well, so you're able to sort of book in one-to-one meetings to talk to us. But yeah, we're there to answer any questions, offer support, and chat to you about your projects. So contact details on there as well for RISE.